So I'm working on the wife's Chrysler 300 again, and I'm changing out the valve cover gaskets. And I've knocked a couple of these seals out and figured I'd show you real quick. The seals come in from the backside, and they're kind of hard to punch out when they're old. The screwdriver tends to punch through them when you're hammering on it. You know, use the proper tool for the job. Use the screwdriver as a punch. But I found that if I come in at lay this over like this to where it's hammering on the outside of the seal, where it's got a little bit of metal support, I guess, or it's just thicker, it tends to push it out. If you try to hammer straight down like that, it just punches through. And so there we go. All three of these are out. I discovered that the seals that it comes with to go back in are a one-way seal. You see it's got a taper here, and it doesn't have a taper on that side. That taper's got to go towards the inside of the engine so that the tubes for the spark plugs can squeeze this out. So these just push in by hand. I've already done the other side valve cover gasket. And so this is my last opportunity to give you some little tips here. This seal does not like to stay in place. It wants to fall out. So when I went to put the other side valve cover gasket back on, the center tube for the spark plug was sticking up too high. And I had to come in here with my bearing race installer and tap it down. I've already done this side. I did all three. Basically, it has a nice hollow tapping sound until you hit bottom, then it sounds solid, and that's how you know you've got them seated all the way. And I don't know if that causes issues on these. Maybe that's part of my wife's ignition problems. I don't know, but I figured since I was in here, I was going to have a hard time getting this cover back on if I didn't do that. And so I've got that fixed now. I got those seated down. Time to put the valve cover on. The more I work on this thing, the more dirt comes loose and tries to come loose into everything. Might help if I get this turned the right way. And there's a whole bunch of wiring harnesses that want to be in the way. You've got to slide this under this end first. Get this harness up over it. And your plug down here is going to try to get into it. And then whenever you go to slide this on, you can make sure that these tubes go in the right places. All right. Oh, the gasket came out on the bottom. Alright, if it doesn't stay on this time, I'm going to get some Vaseline or something to try and stick this seal in. Seal fell out right here. Dang it. All right, so on my wife's Chrysler, I'm still having issues with the wiring on the engine. And I did some surfing around and I found out that TE connectivity made the harness, the components for the wiring harness on that car, the connectors and whatnot. So I hunted around their catalog until I found what looked like the coil wires, or the coil plugs. And I bought some, got them in, and ordered a roll. You have to order the terminals, the actual metal connectors, in a roll of 100, but you can order the connectors a piece. And I got about a dozen of them. But I went to put them on and discovered they're wrong. There's a tab on these connectors that fits into the coil. Or there's a hole for a tab. There's a tab inside the coil that fits into this groove, this notch right here on the connector. Holy crap. So the connectors that are on the car have that notch on the other side. And I've been trying to figure out if I can de-pin the connectors on the car and whatnot, but I'm looking at this. I might be able to cut a notch for that pin on the other side here and get these to work. I'm gonna go check that out. It looks like it's gonna fit, but okay, so I don't know if you can see that notch right there. I've got to cut the notch on the other side. And I didn't bring my glasses. One of these days, I'm going to quit whining about my glasses while I'm out here. And I'm going to get a pair out here. It's about the chintziest way to go about this. But if it works and it fixes my wife's car, what do I care? So, let me read the specs on this for you, if they're on this. The part number for this is 7-1452671-1. That's for the little connectors here, the little terminals. The connectors themselves, they're a 3-position MCON 1.2 LLRE. So if you're looking for connectors for your Chrysler 300, you want the TE connectivity 3-position MCON 1.2 LLRE. The part number is 1-2236343-5, and I'll put links down below. But what it looks like, with a little bit of trimming, you can make these fit the coil. So let's go check that out. So you can see here the connectors that I've spliced a couple times, and the wiring in here is just not good, and I keep having to splice it further out this way and further back that way in the harness. So at some point I'm going to replace all those, but that fits. It does not positively lock. Oh, it does. Boom, look at that. Now if I can just get it back apart. Okay, so whenever you get one of these locked on, that little tab comes out the end. You've got to pry up on that a little bit to get it back out. And I don't have enough hands to show you, but trust me, that works. And so I'm going to rewire all of these. So it's a green wire in the middle and a brown and yellow on the outside, the back position. And I'm going to rewire all 3 of these and run the wires all the way back to here, and hopefully that'll, back here in this part of the harness here, and hopefully there's a ground in here that they're all connected to, and hopefully replacing that will cure this once and for all. So normally I'm a stickler for getting your wire colors right and stuff like that. I don't have the right wire colors for this car, but I've got to get running tonight. So I don't have brown and yellow, but I've got gray and brown. So I'm going to use this for the common grounds. And then the other wire colors, it's got green and yellow, green and light green, and green and blue. So instead of green and yellow, I'm going to use green and red. And for the other 2, I'm just going to use green and blue because that's the only other green color I have. I don't have green and yellow. I'm a dirtbag. I don't have 20,000 different colors of wire. So, but I'm going to be real careful about which one goes where. As it is, the fix I did last time was just with random wire I had laying around, and I just spliced it in, and that was kind of a proof of concept. I got it working for every time I do a repair with that other wire. It works good for a month or so, and then I'll go back and look at it, and then I can find where the wire's loose, kind of wobbly feeling in another place. So I'm pretty sure the wiring is the issue. I'm going to make some pigtails and I'm going to start putting these connectors on, and hopefully this will fix this thing once and for all, and I won't have to worry about it anymore. It's really starting to irk me that I can't get this thing to permanently fix, and I've got to go all the way back onto the back side of the engine and the wiring harness to fix it. The wire harnesses aren't available in the aftermarket. I'm not sure if maybe I'm the only person who's had this problem with the Chrysler 300, but I can't imagine that's the case. I imagine that more than likely these cars are hitting the junkyard and nobody's carrying. So, all right, this one needs to be green and blue because that's actually the correct color. I've got one wire, it's going to be the correct color. There's my 2 wires for that connector. Now I got to cut off a couple of these and crimp them on. Now when you're doing wiring on a car, some guys will swear that you got to solder it. This doesn't have solder from the factory. It's just crimped on, so I'm not going to care about solder. And these just break off like that. You don't even have to cut them. Man, that's nice. All right. So in playing with these terminals, I figured out how to get them together. They have a little locking tab on the side here. You've got to pull back for assembling. And then once you get them in place, you can just push it in and lock it. But they're real sensitive to how deep you get this wire in the terminal. When you crimp these, you just want it deep enough that you can crimp it. You want to leave that little gap there for the locking tab. You can use E, and then for the insulation you can use C. Your crimp is going to face down away from this red tab, and you just slide it in until you hear a click. Alright, that's crimped good. It clicked. Push that little tab in. That's ready to go on. So now I'm just going to make 2 more of these, and I'll have the right side cylinder bank's the only one I'm having this issue with. Left side cylinder bank, if I ever have to, I'll make plugs for it. I've got enough. I got a dozen of these connectors. I wasted one trying to figure this out. All right, these connectors are very sensitive about how far you pull this tab out to lock them in. That's all as far as you need to pull it out. You pull it out that far, and then you can slide these in and connect them, and just click it to lock it. So I've looked for these connectors online, the correct ones that have the notch in the right place, and I can't find them for sale. These here, you know, they're the wrong one. They have a notch in the wrong place. You have to cut that notch out on this side. But I found these on Mauser's website. I found where there are vendors who sell a coil pigtail with a length of wire. It does not have the correct wire. You've just got to make sure you get the wires right. And they charge $60 a piece for these. I bought all these parts from Mauser for about 35 bucks. So, you know, what would have cost me $180 to replace all 3 of these, I'm able to do with the wire colors I want for $36 plus the wire that I already had on hand from trying to rewire the Jaggernaut. So, there you go. That's, you got to rewire the harness on your Chrysler 300. I'll put a link down below for all the parts. All right, so I got the plugs back on. Everything's taped up nice and neat. And so it's now just a matter of getting the intake manifold back on here. I got to make sure I get the seal in right, because it doesn't ever want to seal quite right. You just got to be real gentle with it. Take my plugs out. All right, so when I pulled the car back here last night, it had a dead miss. I mean, just there was no, it was a dead miss. So let's see how the fix worked. All right, so the engine's running smooth. The computer's not letting it rev up, probably because it's still got a trouble code stored in memory, but I think that fixed it. The proof will come if my wife drives it for a couple of months and it doesn't act up again. So I'm gonna call this a success. And I'll put all the links to how to do this yourself. Of course, you're gonna have some wiring skills and, you know, not be timid about going into the engine and pulling apart the intake. You don't have to do the valve covers, but if you're already there, you've got to tore apart that far. The valve cover gaskets is just a couple clips and 8 more bolts per side. So I highly recommend, if you've got that burning oil after you park it, or, you know, when you're on a long drive, it smells like burning oil, get in there and do the valve cover gaskets while you're doing this repair.